Hello, everybody.
Hello, everyone.
I'm Bruce Fielding.
I'm Simon Wells.
We're voiceover artists.
Yes, we are. Can you tell?
You can tell if we do like this, where you get really...
If we actually lean into the microphone.
Yes,
and,
or when we go, and now, the sail is on.
So Bruce and I are voiceover artists. We spend all day sitting in boxes talking into a microphone. And we both love random and interesting facts. So put those two things together, what do you get?
Factoraly.
Which is exactly what I've just described. It's us two talking about interesting, hopefully interesting facts around a particular topic, and you lot listening and absorbing and learning,
Yes.
occasionally correcting us when we get it wrong.
So what's this week's subject, Simon?
This week's subject, Bruce, is fans.
Well, when we said fans, did you have were you thinking about sort of take that? Or were you thinking more about sort of staying cool?
I was definitely thinking of the staying cool movement of air type fan.
Phew, because I was thinking that as well.
Excellent.
Although I did, for a moment, think, fans. And then you've got fanzines and all those sort of Comic-Con and all that stuff.
We should probably have communicated better. It's purely fortuitous that we've actually researched the same type of fans.
Both landed on staying cool.
That could have been a mistake, couldn't it?
Yeah.
Just out of interest, what do you know about fans? The other type that we haven't researched.
Oh, very little. I've never really been a fan. I've sort of never joined a fan club or anything like that.
No, me either. Fan is short for fanatic, which means someone who is wholeheartedly dedicated to a particular cause or interest or whatever it is. Football fans, music fans.
But fan is not short for anything, though, is it? The fan that we're talking about.
The fan that we're talking about, no, it's... I looked this up, obviously.
Of course you did.
Of course I did. I like a bit of etymology. So the word fan, originally in Old English spelt with two N's.
Not even two small F's.
No, it's not Welsh. The Old English word fan, with two N's, comes from the Latin word vanus, which in turn probably, not totally sure, but probably comes from the Latin word ventus, meaning wind.
Ah, because you get things like weather vanes, don't you, which are the things that turn around.
So similarly, that vanus also gives you vanes. So the blades on a windmill, weather vanes on top of a building that tells you which direction the wind is coming from, all connected to the same root of vanus.
All sorts of fan.
Indeed. But that word fan, with its double N, was first used, as far as I can find out, in an agricultural sense in the use of winnowing.
Ah.
And winnowing is where you separate a grain into its usable, edible bits and the chaff, the husk, that you don't need.
Yes.
And you had a winnowing fan. So this is the very first original meaning of the word fan. So a winnowing fan... I don't know why I'm putting my hands out like this to show it to you, because this is an audio podcast.
It basically blows across as you mill, and it drops down. It blows across and blows the light stuff to one side, and the heavy stuff drops.
Exactly that. So this is an ancient practice, still used in certain parts of the world. It's used in harvesting rice in China. It's used in harvesting wheat throughout Europe in small, sort of cottage industry style. You have this wicker tray, you have all of your grain on it, you toss it up into the air like a chef, flipping a frying pan. As you say, the light chaff, the husky stuff, blows away in the wind and you're left with the grain. So that's the wind connection. That's why it derives from the Latin word for wind, because the wind is used to blow away the chaff.
Of course.
So that's a winnowing fan.
Okay. Well, the first thing that came into my head, and this may be just the way I'm wired, was fan dance.
Oh, right. Okay, fine.
And I discovered that the thing that I thought was a fan dance is only one of the things that's a fan dance.
There are many other types of fan dance, are there?
There are two other things that are fan dances.
Oh, okay.
So the first thing that pops up when you look up fan dance, weirdly, isn't either the burlesque thing or the other thing I've completely forgotten about, which was the Chinese fan dancing.
Of course, yes. Yes, sort of flittering a little hand fan in front of your face and
exactly.
moving around in circles.
Yes, all that stuff.
Yeah.
It's actually a special forces thing that they call the fan dance. And what it is, it's a 15-mile hike up a mountain in Wales with a fully loaded backpack. And you have to complete this 15-mile march in 4 hours and 10 minutes as part of, it's like all the special forces do this thing called the fan dance.
Really?
Yeah.
I've never heard of that.
I know.
Of all the possible random stuff you could have brought up today about fans, not for a minute did I think of a special forces hike.
We are random stuff.
That's incredible. I wonder why they call it a fan dance other than just for sheer hilarity.
I did try and find that out, and there is no reference to why it's called a fan dance. Maybe people can tell us. So before I go on to my two other sorts of fan dancing, have you got any other sorts of fans that you'd like to talk about?
Well, I mean, when I say fan, I automatically think of an electric fan on a stand blowing nice cool air.
Does it sound like this?
That's uncanny. That's exactly what it sounds like. And that wasn't even a sound effect. That was actually Bruce holding a small fan up to his mic.
Yep, it was.
Very good. So there's that. Automatically, I think of that. After that, I think of the handheld fan that starts off as a rectangular thing that you can slip in your pocket, and then you fan it open so that it makes a hand fan, which you then waft daintily in your face in order to cool down.
Yep.
There are an awful lot of different varieties of hand fan, and some of them are actually very old. So the oldest mention of a hand fan that I can find is from 2000 BC in Egypt.
Ah.
So I mentioned the sort of fan that you fold out. Those are relatively recent. So before that, a fan was a solid object, often sort of a circular wooden frame with a handle, with perhaps a silk screen woven over it that you would constantly have by your side
Right.
and waft yourself with. There have been large palm leaves suspended from the ceiling, tied up to a rope and a pulley, and you would have someone, standing by.
Punkawalla.
Boom! See, this is why I have this relationship with Bruce. He knows exactly what a punkawalla is. What's a punkawalla?
Punkawalla it's basically a chap who sits quietly in a corner with a piece of string, just pulling the piece of string up and down, which moves like as a cam thing, moves
Yes.
a piece of wood across from side to
Yes.
side. And attached to the piece of wood is a piece of material or a leaf or something, which wafts cooling air down towards the person sitting underneath it.
Exactly. And that fan was called a punka. In India, around 500 BC, is the first mention we find of a punka, or punka, however you want to pronounce it. And the person who operates it is, as you say, a punkawalla. Great word.
Isn't it brilliant? Well, it wasn't just India. Similar things in China. About 3,000 years ago, similar frame with beautiful Chinese designs on it and writing.
Yeah.
And there was a dance that went with the fan, which was like an entertainment
Right.
that took ages to learn. It was really precise. And it was a mixture of dance, Tai Chi, and Kung Fu.
Oh.
I mean, a properly regulated, regimented thing. And it took like one dance, which didn't take that long to do. It took about 3 months to learn.
Oh, my goodness.
And you had to get every single movement absolutely precise. And they were usually done for things like Chinese New Year.
Okay.
So people would learn a new fan dance
Yeah.
for the next Chinese New Year. And they would kind of put in the animal into that dance.
Right.
And it was brilliant. And the other thing that Chinese used it for was a bit like, at a wedding, people the bride wears a veil over her
Yes.
face. The Chinese used a fan like that. The person getting married would put the fan over her face, so that just showing her mouth.
Right.
And then at the conclusion of the ceremony, she would lift the fan, and everybody would go, "Oh, she's adorable."
Or, oh, that's the wrong person.
Oh dear, what have I done? The folding fans were also, they may have been an Egyptian invention. The Chinese claim that they were Chinese, obviously.
Everybody's going to claim that it's their invention, but I've found reasonable evidence to suggest that they are Japanese in origin. The folding hand fans. There are examples of this dating back to the 6th century in Japan. First of all, on tomb paintings. In Japanese tomb paintings, there are examples of this thing. And it's very clear what they are. They are individual slats of wood or ivory or whatever, with thin layers of paper or feathers or silk woven in between the slats. And the slats are all attached together by a pivot at one end so that the whole thing can collapse or fan open. Obviously, the word fan as a verb comes from that fact that you open a fan and it fans open.
Yes, and things like fan-tailed, when you're talking about birds and stuff.
Sure, I suppose peacocks have been fanning long before fans existed.
Yes, yes.
But these things are terribly delicate and sometimes very expensive, depending on your class in society. Some of them were just a single sheet of paper with a beautiful painting or illustration on it. And yes, the fan was a very important accessory to a lady of status.
And then they came west.
They did.
Like everything. Probably Marco Polo. He seemed to have brought it.
He's done an awful lot to bring stuff over, hasn't he?
Yes. Spaghetti and piñatas.
Please listen to our previous episodes that explain what Bruce just said.
They were very popular with the French in the 17th century or the 1600s. And then the Huguenots had a little bit of a contretemps with the French church.
Right.
And decided to come to the UK. And they not only brought all their lacework and all the fabulous other stuff that the Huguenots used to do, they also brought with them the fan.
So that's how we got them. Interesting.
So there were sort of different types. There was a brisée, which was basically just sticks. There was nothing really there.
Okay.
Sort of between the veins, if you like,
Yeah.
of the fan. Then there was the pleated fan, which is the one that we kind of know a bit.
Right.
And then there was the cockade, which was one that I've actually got one, which it starts off as a stick and you open it up and it turns into a complete circle.
Oh, I can picture that, yes.
Yes,
yeah.
which is lovely. And actually, I had a dinner party many years ago when it was incredibly hot and we didn't have air conditioning in the dining room.
Yeah.
So I went out to Chinatown because I don't live that far from Chinatown in London.
Okay.
And I just went into a shop and I said, we had about 12 people for dinner. And I said, can I have like 15 Chinese fans, please? Just cheap paper fans.
Yeah.
And they were all that sort of cockade circular fan. And so we basically just put one on each place setting so that everybody could actually just fan themselves while they were eating their food.
That's very good. I like that. Now, I've often wondered, as I'm sure many of us have, these things keep us lying awake at night. I've often wondered, how does a hand fan or an electric fan work? It's not actually generating cold air. That's what aircon is for. It's purely wafting around the warm air that is too warm, which is why we want the fan in the first place. And I hadn't really realised this, but apparently the wafting of air against the skin makes sweat evaporate to a certain extent.
Yes.
And therefore leaves your skin slightly cooler than it was before when it had the sweat on it. And the second action of a fan is to purely move the particularly hot air that surrounds your body away from you.
Yes, because we generate it, don't we? That's why if you wear a hat, you stay warmer.
Yes, it traps the hot air in.
Yes.
So yes, I found it interesting to actually realise, there are some mechanics. There is actually some science involved in
the physics of fans.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
But when they became very popular in the UK, as always, we thought, we can go one better than this, didn't we? And, we made celebration fans for coronations and all the other various odds and sods that we do. But then it's, like magazines today have like sort of scandal sheets. So what the magazines did is that they started to come up with, because fans were very popular, things like fan languages.
Oh, good. You went down that route. Excellent.
Yes. So in 1740, Gentleman's Magazine, why it wasn't a ladies' magazine, but Gentleman's Magazine, talked about speaking fan, and they broke the alphabet up into 5 sections of 25 letters each. They left off the J for some reason.
Okay.
And there were various different positions that you could put the fan in, like sort of leaning on held in the right hand and leaning the fan on the left forearm or left bicep or wherever.
Yes.
And so each of these 5 positions was one of the 5 letters of the alphabet in that section. In that section.
Oh.
So you would do two moves. Would give you like, okay, it's the first section, the third letter, so that's a C.
Ah, my goodness, that's complex.
But then Obviously, somebody thought, it's too boring. We're much more salacious than that at Cassell's magazine.
Ooh.
So let's talk about what fan language actually is. And it's like, if you're a woman carrying your fan in your left hand,
yes,
that means you're desirous of an acquaintance.
Ooh.
Or if you hold your fan like open, that says wait for me. and if you start fanning very slowly, that says I'm married.
Right, okay.
And if you draw the fan through the hand,
yes,
that means I hate you.
Oh my goodness.
So you can kind of go, I'm desirous of an acquaintance, wait for me, I'm married. Oh, I hate you.
It's beginning to sound like semaphore. If you really wanted to string together a particularly complicated sentence, you'd be waving your fan all over the place, wouldn't you?
You could. Or you could accidentally send people mixed messages because you were just a bit hot.
Yes. Or you dropped your fan by mistake.
Yes. Did you have a look into fan language?
Yeah, so I found examples of this a little bit later than what you're talking about. I looked at the Sotheby's website, Sotheby's being an English auction house, and they had a little section about antique fans. And I came across a company called Duvalroy.
Okay.
French company, moved to England. They were a fan maker and retailer, founded in Paris in 1827. They, as you say, this whole thing is rather manufactured for by the people who sort of create these leaflets and brochures in order to increase sales. It's
of course
it's not reporting what already exists; they're actually causing it to exist. And yes, this leaflet published by Duvalroy said very, very similar to the things you've just said. But yes, so Duvalroy published this leaflet because apparently the sale of fans had reduced slightly. During the sort of early 1800s, they'd lost their appeal for whatever reason, and purely in order to boost sales, this company published another leaflet propounding this myth that they mean something, and if you own one, you're terribly clever and terribly stylish.
Sort of bringing it back.
Yeah,
relaunch.
So following the French Revolution, I think the popularity of fans had reduced. They were seen as a little bit aristocratic, so these guys published this leaflet to resurge the sale of them. A couple of other things I've found about the language. There are loads of these things. There are, as you say, there's 25 odd moves that can represent different things. I found placing the fan against your left ear signified to the other person, I want you to go away immediately.
That's a very polite way of putting what I was thinking.
Yes, absolutely. But yes, we've all watched various, Jane Austen style Regency,
Regency period
absolutely.
Dramas. Yes.
And I've always just assumed, that person is just dangling their fan by the string, or they're wafting themselves because they're warm. But actually, you look back at some of these episodes or these movies, they are absolutely accurately done. They've actually put this into the script to represent what they are saying to the person, or more importantly, what they're not saying to the other person on the screen. They've actually recreated the fan actions in some of them.
So some sad nerd like us has gone through the script and gone, okay, we need you to be holding your fan like this at this point.
Precisely. Yeah.
Wow.
That's encouraging, isn't it?
Yeah.
Research is not dead. And then this company, Duvalroy, eventually became a supplier of fans to Queen Victoria and the rest of the royal household. And they set up a boutique in New Bond Street in London, and just further cemented the popularity of fans in those social circles.
You do still see fans being used. Like I've been to music gigs and things like that where it's very hot.
Yeah.
And a lot of the time people will have taken a fan with them to just keep them cool, and then when you see it, you go, God, I wish I'd had the foresight to do that.
Absolutely, yes. I mean, they seem like such a rudimentary device, but actually I've seen people using them in the theatre. They're silent. That's their benefit.
I guess.
They do the job and they're quiet.
They pack away quite neatly into a handbag.
Yeah.
Unless you happen to be goods of desire in Hong Kong.
Do you know what? Honestly, I've also looked up goods of desire in Hong Kong. So Bruce and I don't plan this at all. One day, Bruce says, what should we do next week, Simon? I said, I don't know. Maybe fans. We don't talk for a week. We do our research. We come back and present our findings to you, dear listeners. We've both researched goods of desire. Go on then, Bruce.
So I'm going to ask you some questions and I want you to answer it.
Okay.
Okay, we are talking, by the way, about the biggest folding fan, which was produced by Goods of Desire. And Simon,
Yes.
how long was this fan?
This fan was just over 8¼ meters in length.
That's about 28 feet.
It's quite long, isn't it?
That's a very long fan. And Simon, how high was this fan?
It was about 5½ meters high, I think, if I remember
17
correctly.
feet.
There you go.
Absolutely. See, you not only get the facts, you get them in metric and imperial.
He's the imperial, I'm the metric.
And this was back in 2009.
Yeah. And it went into the Guinness Book of Records, as rightly it should, as the largest fan in the world.
But we've been talking up to now about the sorts of fans that you carry in your hand.
Yeah.
Or we mentioned at one point the ones that you have on your desk.
Yeah.
There are bigger fans than that.
There are.
There are a lot more powerful and bigger fans.
Okay. Have you sort of looked into industrial stuff here?
Well, see, I'm a great fan of Formula One.
Ah,
And they have wind tunnels in Formula One.
do they?
And the thing that powers a wind tunnel
Is a big old fan.
is a great, huge fan. And what they do is these wind tunnels cost about sort of a mere $60 to $100 million
How was that on?
to produce.
I thought you were going to say they're expensive.
And they're allowed, depending on where they finish in the season. If you finish sort of high up, you're allowed fewer runs in the wind tunnel.
Right.
And if you finish lower down, you're allowed more runs in the wind tunnel.
Okay.
So between 30 and 45 runs a week.
Okay.
And what they do is they use not little, but 60% scale models
Ah,
of Formula One cars.
right.
And they build them out of metal mostly because then it's easier to change things on the metal.
Okay.
And they run these things at about, I think they're limited to 100 miles an hour, something like that.
Okay.
No faster than that. And they spend an absolute fortune on these wind tunnels because it makes your car go faster. And if your car goes faster, you get more points. And if you get more points, you get more money.
So, speaking as someone who is not a Formula One fan, brilliant. I don't quite get this. What is the purpose of that? What is the purpose of putting a model car through a tunnel with a big fan in it? What does that achieve?
Okay, I could get a bit nerdy here. I'm going to try not to.
Briefly, we have done an episode on cars already, so
We have.
briefly.
Okay. Aerodynamics. It's all about aerodynamics.
Okay.
So what you want is for the car to be minimally affected by the friction of air,
Okay.
but you want to use the air to hold the car to the ground. So you want some sort of ground effect so that actually it acts like a reverse wing.
Okay.
So that rather than lifting an airplane up in the air, it sucks the
I see.
the car to the floor. What they do in these wind tunnels is they add little winglets and little bits and pieces to actually alter the airflow
I
to
see.
make the air go through the engine correctly to keep the engine cool.
Right.
So so what you want is a car that slips through the air really cleanly, that is sucked down to the floor, so that when it goes around corners, that doesn't have to lose any speed. It can continue at high speed around corners.
Right.
And that's what the wind tunnels are for, is to make sure that your car is working optimally in terms of that.
Gotcha.
And those kinds of wind tunnels are not only used for cars; they're used for aeroplanes as well. There's one in America called the Ames Research Center.
Right.
I don't know whether you came across this in
I did not know.
in your research.
I had a feeling you would do it for me.
The Ames Research Center, you can get whole bits of aeroplane, whole wings and stuff. It's 40 foot wide, 8 foot high. And the fan runs it up to 300 knots, about 350 miles an hour.
Right.
And it'll take a full-sized aeroplane part. So you can test a wing or a wheel or a bit of fuselage. And you can kind of work out how the wind is going to affect the aeroplane in the air, which is amazing. And then, of course, to get into the air, you also need a fan because jet turbines,
engines,
are the things that get the airplanes into the air.
Yeah.
And there's the most powerful fan there is the General Electric 90.
Right.
which is on a Boeing 777.
Okay.
And that generates 115,000 pounds-foot of thrust, which is a lot.
Goodness me.
Each one of those, so 4 of those,
Huh.
you're going to go up in the air.
Right. Wow. See, now I can visualize an engine on an aeroplane. I all the way back from an old propeller plane to a jet engine.
Yes.
I would never specifically call that a fan, purely because of its purpose, I guess. I so associate a fan as being something that blows air onto you to keep you cool. This is just doing that in reverse. It's sucking air through it and blowing it out the back in order to provide thrust.
Well, if you think about it, the propeller on an aeroplane is a kind of a fan too.
I suppose so, yeah.
It's something that's blowing air backwards.
Yes,
to make the
in order to make the
aeroplane go
object that
forwards.
it's attached to go forwards, yeah.
Yes.
I'd never really put those two together. How interesting.
I have my last fact about fan dancing, because obviously I've been fan dancing the whole way through.
Okay.
I have friends who are fan dancers,
Right.
in the burlesque sense
Okay.
of being a fan dancer. So the very first fan dance, it's like an erotic way of dancing.
Mm-hmm.
Sort of, you can be either naked or apparently naked,
Yeah.
and use 2 fans. It has to be 2
Okay.
to hide your body from your audience.
Yeah.
And the first person to bring this to popularity was a woman called Sally Rand.
Okay.
And she appeared at the 1934 Chicago World's Fair.
Right.
And she did this fan dance that shocked and amazed everybody.
Yeah.
It was so sexy. And everybody's going, wow, how is she doing that? And when you look at there is footage of Sally Rand actually doing these dances.
Right.
And you watch it and you go, that's really clever. In the 1930s, when nobody had done it really before her,
Yeah.
to actually move the fans so that you never really know what's happening. And she would do things like she would go behind a screen, which was like covered in tracing paper, and always be backlit. A lot of the time, it's one of the things that's fairly common with fan dancers,
Okay.
is that they're backlit, because then the feathers in the fan, which are beautiful,
Yeah.
bouffant
They're sort
feathers.
of large ostrichy
Exactly.
feathers, aren't they?
They are usually ostrich
very
feathers.
fluffy, very large.
Yes, yeah, and very opaque. And so they would do these dances, and then she would go behind this screen so that you could see the silhouette of her behind the screen. And she was probably wearing a bodysuit or something, but it looked
Just in
very
case.
sexy. And then she would come out, and she would still be using the fans. And it was absolutely fascinating. And it just exploded. Then it kind of died off a bit.
Right.
And then the gay community got hold of fan dancing. Drag acts got very, very big into fan dancing.
Yeah, sure.
And then it sort of had a huge resurgence about sort of 10, 15 years ago.
Right.
And now it's quite a common sight at a burlesque to see somebody.
Right.
And it's really hard. I mean, if you look, I don't know if you've ever seen a drummer's hands, like an African drummer or somebody who drums with their hands.
Right, okay.
They have really, really tough, rough skin on their hands.
Yeah.
Fan dancers, very similar,
Really?
because they're really quite heavy.
Oh, yes, I suppose so, yeah.
The rule was basically you dance with your fans until your hands become hamburgers, and then you rest until they recover, and then you do it again and again and again, until your hands get so strong and tough that you can move these fans around as elegantly as they do.
Wow. That's impressive. Yeah, because they make it look so effortless, don't they? It's just a gentle waft of the hand. And I'm using the word waft an awful lot today.
Well, we're talking about fans,
It
so
makes
wafting
sense.
is allowed.
Absolutely. But yes, I hadn't really thought about how heavy and cumbersome they are, and probably quite unwieldy, because they're moving against the air. So
Yes.
they're going to be quite hard work, I
And yet
suppose.
you have to make it look elegant
Yeah.
and stylish and
Yeah.
smooth and cool.
Absolutely. The average fan that everybody has in their house, at least in this country, everyone has a fan in their house for those 3 days each year
Yes.
in the British summer when it gets unbearably hot and you need to cool down. So electrical fans, in that sense, in terms of domestic or office use to cool one down, they're older than I had realised. The first electrical fan for that purpose was created back in the 1800s. There was an American gentleman called Schuyler Wheeler. Great name.
Schuyler. I love the name Schuyler.
Lovely name, isn't it? Schuyler Wheeler in the 1880s developed this electrical fan and patented it. And it was exactly as we picture a fan now. You know, it's 3 or 4 blades that are slightly tilted. They're put on a pivot. They rotate due to a motor, and they propel air forward in your general direction.
I'm betting it didn't have a cage around it to stop you from chopping your hands off.
Surprisingly, it did.
Really?
Yeah. I didn't think it would either, but it had a cage. Not a very good one, to be fair, but still it had a cage. And around the same time in the early 1880s, another fella called Philip DL made the first electric ceiling fan. So neither of them can necessarily claim I invented the electric fan, but it was around that era. And that's a lot earlier than I thought it was going to be. I sort of think of the classic 1920s, 30s detective comics. They've always got a fan,
ceiling fan,
chopping away on the ceiling. Yeah. But yes, the 1880s. And then to bring that up to the modern day, I had a quick look at bladeless fans.
Oh, what, like the Dyson?
Like the Dyson. So it looks like a fan. It's on a stand. It has a large circular rim, but there's nothing inside it, and it somehow projects cool air out of it. The concept of a bladeless fan was put forward by Toshiba way back in 1981, but it was the Dyson company who made it a reality 2009. And they used the phrase air amplifying technology.
Ooh.
And it uses a couple of scientific techniques called inducement and entrainment, which kind of comes back to what you were saying about the way that the F1 cars use air to suck them into the ground. So it uses something a little bit like that. So you have a small motor. It's not entirely bladeless because although you can't see any blades, there is a small fan, a small motor in the base of the fan, and it just generates a little bit of air at a low velocity. It projects that air through thin slots that go all the way around the rim of this circular tubular device, and then the air sort of wafts around that circle again and again and again.
Sorry, can I just stop you there?
Certainly.
Go back to the beginning of this podcast.
Yes.
Get a bottle of vodka and a shot glass. Every time Simon says waft.
That's definitely the way to do it. I'm going to use it even more now.
Sorry, so carry on. You were wafting.
I was wafting. So the air is projected through the slots. It circulates. It doesn't waft. It circulates around the rim of this circular device. And that action, that sort of stream of air, sucks air into it from the outside, and that is called entrainment. And so it sucks more air in, it then amplifies it again, projects it out, creates this airflow stream, sucks more air in. So it actually amplifies air.
Right. So it's a bit like a perpetual motion sort of air machine.
Yes, it produces a bit of air, it sucks in more air, it produces even more air, it sucks in more air.
Wow.
And so you just get this constant, and because there are no blades in the main body of the fan, it's not chopping air. It's not sort of blowing it to you in small waves. It's just a constant flow.
What a good idea.
Why
are they so expensive?
Because they can be. If you have a certain technology that's patented by one person and one person alone, they can kind of charge what they want.
So have we spun up our fans sufficiently now, do you think?
I think so. I think I've wafted away all of my facts.
Thank you for listening. We really appreciate your listening to this.
We do.
And if you do like them, then tell people that you like them and tell them where they can find it.
Yes.
Like, subscribe, rate, and review, and share.
All those things. Yes. So please tune in next week for another fun-filled episode of Factoraly. Goodbye.
Cheerio.